Welcome, everyone. I'm pleased to have you join us today for our first RESNI webinar of the 2023-2024 academic year. And for this, especially to be able to welcome our guest Masha Karp and Tamizdat Project. Tamizdat Project is run by Yasha Klotz, Associate Professor of Russian at Hunter College at the City University of New York, and is the recipient of one of our sets of funding for RESNI working groups. And so this is a program that takes place both within the auspices of the RESNI working groups and with co-sponsorship by Tamizdat Project and RESNI, with many thanks to our various sponsors for this. I'll turn it over once again to Yasha Klotz, Associate Professor of Russian at Hunter College.
Thank you so much, Ian, and it's our great honor to be partnering with the RESNI working group out of Macmillan Center at Yale, and it's a tremendous pleasure for me to co-host this event together with at least two Tamizdat project participants, Diana Gore and Nicole Gonik, who are doing a lot of other things, but have been very devotedly part of the Tamizdat project for at least a year now. And I'm very honored and simply glad to have Masha Karp with us today, unfortunately virtually, but we hope we will have more conversations in person. Masha Karp is a journalist. She's based in London. She's the author of this very important and simply fascinating book called 2 + 2 = 5, Orwell, George Orwell and Russia. The first one of its kind. And the reason we have invited Masha, and she has generously agreed to do this seminar or webinar with us today, is that Orwell has been a topic for our project, at least this past summer. We have been clearly expanding our initial definition of Tamizdat as works published elsewhere, but written in the languages of the former Soviet Union and countries of the Eastern Bloc. And it's a very exciting journey that we embarked on to take it elsewhere, to take it to books such as those written by Orwell or Aldous Huxley or other non-East European, non-Soviet or socialist bloc authors. So we will talk about this today with Masha, who will start, and then we will be asking her questions, and really hope it kind of generates a much longer long-term conversation. Masha, thank you so much again for being with us, and Ian and Tarana for making it happen. And without further ado, Masha, I think the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Tamizdat Project and Yasha in particular, and thank you, RESNI working groups and Ian Macmillan and Tarana for organizing all this. I'm really very flattered to be invited, and I hope we'll have an interesting conversation. I don't know how many people in the audience have read my book, so I will generally start with some examples of how Tamizdat, and especially Tamizdat for Orwell's books, worked in the past. And generally, I would, when I thought about this invitation and your project, I thought that the best title for it would be a quote from Orwell's article about Burnham's view of contemporary world, because he said there that one of the most important problems at the moment is to find a way of speaking to the Russian people over the heads of their rulers. And so my topic is to tell you how this was done in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And then because I think that unfortunately we see many features of the totalitarian world described by Orwell resurfacing in modern Russia. I'll try to give an idea of how the West reacted and why reacted to what had been happening in Russia and to lead to this situation, and also to explain why it's such a tragedy that we haven't had anybody like Orwell with us during this time. But I will be starting, which I haven't, I'm not going to use the PowerPoint presentation because I thought it might be more interesting to see the actual books and the actual pictures of what I would like to show you. So this is the book I've already shown at the very beginning to see whether you can see it clearly. This is the most mysterious book in the whole history of publishing Orwell in Russian for Russian readers. This is Homage to Catalonia in Russian. It is really a very small book. It fits into an ordinary pocket. Let me show you a usual Penguin edition of the book, and you will immediately see that this book is smaller and quite convenient, of quite a convenient format. It starts with a very short intro, giving some information about George Orwell, and after publishing the whole text of Homage to Catalonia, there is an essay that Orwell wrote in 1942, looking back on Spanish War. This is all quite usual. What is unusual about this book? That there is no date of the publication and no name of the translator. I must say that the translation is quite good. It's very, very decent. It could have been more polished, as translations usually can be, unless they are done by absolute geniuses, but it is a very decent translation. And the search, the quest, I would say, for this translator has been going on for years and years and years, and no success has been met yet. Now, another interesting thing is that here it says Édition de la Seine Paris, and of course, this publishing house has never existed. These books, and it's not the only one published by this imaginary publisher. Let me show you, I have one more. This is Robert Kennedy's 13 Days, the story of the Soviet-Cuban missile crisis. The book was written in was published, in 1969 after Robert Kennedy's assassination. And here again, you see the same Édition de la Seine. Now, these editions were, these names, as I said, were imaginary. the publishing houses never existed, and they were published, as those of you who have been studying Tamizdat must know, they have been published by the CIA. Now, we have a very decent, a very detailed memoir of a woman called Lyudmila Thorne. It hasn't yet been published, but I hope it will be. She died in 2009. And it is still in a manuscript form in Bakhmetiev's archive, so you are closer to it than I am. But this is a memoir mostly about her work for the organizations that were set up by the CIA precisely to publish works to reach the readers in Russia, now in the Soviet Union. Now, Lyudmila Thorne was a remarkable woman. She was born in 1938, and she grew up in the West and in America, I think. And she helped a lot of wonderful Soviet dissidents, from Pavel Litvinov, who was one of the 8 heroes who protested in the Red Square against the Soviet invasion in Czechoslovakia in 1968. And thank God he's alive, he's with us in America. And to Vladimir Bukovsky, who died 4 years ago in 2019, and he lived here in the UK, in Cambridge. She felt it was her mission to help people in Russia, especially the Soviet intelligentsia, who was thirsty for this information about ideas, and who did not have any access to Orwell, to Camus, to historical books. And she felt that by working for the organizations, of which I'll tell you a few words now, she was helping in her small way to fight the wretched regime, as she said. Now, interestingly, the attempts to create book programs originated on the basis of radio. As someone who used to work for the BBC, I think it's very good, but it wasn't the BBC. They would have never done it because their general policy is different. But Radio Liberty and Radio Free Europe, which were created in the 50s, Radio Free Europe that broadcast to Eastern Europe, was founded in 1950, and Radio Liberty in 1953, just days before Stalin's death was announced. I think they were founded on the 1st of March. So obviously people in the Soviet Union just tried to get some information from them. So that was the years of these radio's foundations. And you must have noticed that Radio Liberty, the one that was broadcasting to the Soviet Union, was created several years later than Radio Free Europe. And interestingly, it was formed originally on the basis of American Committee for Fighting Bolshevism. That was another organization created in 1951. And it was this committee, incidentally, headed by Eugene Lyons, the author of the book Assignment into Utopia, which first let Orwell know about this slogan 2 + 2 is 5, the slogan that Eugene Lyons described in his book, and Orwell took it very, very close to heart and used as the center for 1984 in a way. And I have this slogan on the cover of my book as well, this 2 + 2 is 5. So Eugene Lyons, who had personal experience of the Soviet Union, was the head of this, let me tell you this abbreviation, it is something like ABLIB, wait a minute, AMCOMLIB, so American Committee for Liberation from Bolshevism. So they, between 1951, 1953, were already sending books to the Soviet Union. Not very many, I don't think, because it was quite difficult. Well, they were trying. Then, eccentrically enough, I would say, Radio Free Europe started sending balloons. That's my favorite part of the whole history of trying to percolate the Iron Curtain, sending balloons. But of course, they sent these balloons to the Eastern European countries, Poland and Czechoslovakia. But very soon, it wouldn't have worked with the Soviet Union with its huge territory and being too far away. But they thought it was dangerous to send it even for these short distances. And then it was discontinued, the project. Now, there was a special book program that originated in 1956. And of course, then the question arose how you send these books. At first, there was the idea of blind mailings. So today, in the time of internet, it's difficult to imagine that people in the West didn't even know any Russian names, any Russian addresses. They would take names randomly from telephone books that they could get hold of from some newspaper articles, and just sent these books to the people they knew nothing about. This wasn't a very effective method either. And then they started doing handouts. And this was something where Lyudmila Thorne was involved, and she describes it pretty in pretty much detail. Now, the head of the Soviet of the book program that sent books to the Soviet Union was a man called Isaac Patch, and he was doing it between 1956 and 1972. And then the programs of sending books to the Soviet Union joined forces with the program for Eastern Europe, which was headed by a Romanian emigre called George Minden. That probably wasn't his real name. Now, this was quite an interesting endeavor in itself, the way the books were handed out. Obviously, there were much fewer people coming to coming to the West from the Soviet Union than from Eastern Europe, where things were easier in many respects. The punishments for having forbidden books were not that strict. More people knew foreign languages than they did in the Soviet Union. So this was a particularly difficult patch of work. And Ludmila Thorne describes in her memoir how they tried to give these small books. It wasn't this one, and I'll tell you why in a moment, but the books as small as this one to sportsmen, to scientists who came to some conferences, to musicians, to sailors. And this was an incredible success for the project because people who had the books had several options. They could just quietly read them and keep them at home. They could, for benefit of others, retype them or share them. Thus, especially retyping them was turning them from Tamizdat into Samizdat, that is putting some work into this publishing. And or they could sell them if they were completely uninterested or really very afraid. They could go. There were places, I know in my native Leningrad, I know where these places were, and I'm sure in Moscow and in other big cities, I suppose, more big cities than smaller towns, there were places where people could go and just sell them because the demand for Tamizdat books was always very high. And once, at one point, when the book program separated from the radio, it called itself, the one that sent books to the Soviet Union, it called itself Bedford Publishing or Bedford Publishing Program, and its headquarters was in New York. But because there were not so many people coming to America, they also had centers in Europe. There were 3 centers in Europe. Ali, that was in Rome. Then there was CIL, that was, it's all in different languages, so I won't torture you with my wrong accent in Italian or French. And the third one was in London. It was called UBEX, and that was deciphered as Universal Book Exchange. Now, why do we know that Homage to Catalonia was not one of the books that Ludmila Thorne was handing out when she was in Rome? She spent with this book program with the years nearly, 10 years between 1964 and 1975. Because she generally, and one can see it from her memoir, she remembered a lot. But people asked her, because this search for the translator started many years ago, and people asked her, who did you commission the translation to? When do you think was it? And she couldn't remember anything. Neither could her colleague, Jack Stewart, who was fired from Ali, from this Italian base, in 1973. Unfortunately, he was set up by the KGB. They created a trap for him, they scared him, and he betrayed people working for this book program. And that made Ludmila, who adored this work, leave because her name was also compromised. So the story with Jack was he was fired in 1973. In 1975, in Literatурная газета, they had a sort of a lurid Soviet-style publication, 2 huge pages about the nest of enemies, and it was called Rim, улица Лютеции. That was the address of the alley office, and in 1975, and Ludmila also had to go. So my idea is that probably Homage to Catalonia was translated and published later. Now, the role of the CIA in this project was very much, was very helpful for enlightening people in the Soviet Union. Ludmila Thorne's memoir is called Books, Not Bombs. And the feeling the Russian emigres who worked for these offices, they, as I mentioned, they felt that they were fighting the regime. And the CIA, and this needs to be stressed, never told them what to publish. They gave money for publications, for buying published books from Russian emigre publishers abroad, like Pasiev. They were paying for the offices. They were paying people who worked there, like Ludmila, because there were several people. But they did not dictate the selection of books. That was done by Russian emigres, and their choice was, they didn't publish, I mean, according to Ludmila Thorne and to Ivan Tolstoy's article, Platform for Tamizdat, in these 10 years that Ludmila was working there, they maybe published 24 of books, not more. The print runs were big. They were between 4,000 and 7,000.